Hello and welcome to our video covering the brand new version 9.11 Flow Designer refresh in Decisions. Today we're going to talk about the various updates that we changed to refresh how the Flow Designer looks in the brand new 9.11 version update. Now the first and most obvious change that you'll notice is that we've overhauled how all of the steps look in Decisions. You can already see immediately that there is a larger array of colors in the various steps that I have available. So here I have a bunch of different steps here to see the various colors and changes that I can have to them. Things like yellow forms, cyan fetch entities, a like violet run reports, orange for each, the green rules, blue kind of like other steps, more common steps, and the gray subflows available in here. So there's quite a bit of differences and larger views on the different steps and how they look. But there's also more of a uniformity in the shapes of all of these different steps and decisions here. So you can see we kind of kept the same rule shape here with the diamond, but a lot of these other steps that had different shapes, like the form was a very obvious one. The fetch entities had its own shapes sometimes in the ways that you looked at them. And they all had different sizes. They're now all a uniform size, so they're all pretty much the same size for the most part, as well as the same general design. So it looks a lot sleeker and is a little bit easier to see the different steps and things. Another new update and change to the way that steps work and connect are the different pathways and the way that the pathways can enter steps. In previous versions, you may have noticed that a lot of steps, when I had multiple paths trying to enter the same step, they overlapped very easily, and I had to adjust, had to adjust where they entered if I wanted to make sure that they were entering on a different side of the step to make sure that they didn't overlap. Well, that has also gone away, and there's actually some great designs to allow it to expand and spread out. A great way to demonstrate this is if I bring in a string match step, because it's easy to grab a bunch of pathways from this step. And if I grab a bunch of paths and I start dragging all of them into this for each step, you'll see they go to the center, and then as I add more, they separate out so that they don't run into each other and overlap. So then by the end, I have this neat connection between these steps where they're all separated and they don't actually blend in together. So I can add a whole bunch of steps onto this, or pathways onto this, all leading to the same place. So then I can make sure that I don't get mixed up on where they're connecting. I can still find it useful to maybe shift things to a different side of the step, to still avoid some confusion, but at least it's a little bit nicer to have them all going in on one. Or if I have a case where there's so many pathways going into the same step, I don't have to worry as much about it getting confusing. Another thing you may notice just in general while looking at this view is this grid in the background. In previous versions, there was a way to have a grid available in the background. It just was not there by default, and now it is. It is completely available for you to see as soon as you open up a flow. You can also remove it if you don't want the grid there and turn it on if you want to keep it on. But by default, it is there, and it really does help to keep things locked in place and to help connect the steps, make your pathways straight, and not have those little annoying pixel differences when you're placing your steps together. So it's a lot easier to make things connect. Another thing that kind of helps with that as well is there's more uniformity on the shape sizes. And so all of the shapes, width and heights are actually in multiples of 20, which makes it a lot easier to see them. So you can see the basic shape here is 120 by 100. The rules are organized 140 by 140. Our start and end steps here are organized as 60 by 60. So since they're in multiples of 20, it's a lot easier to make sure that the pathways do connect and are straight and aren't causing a lot of issues, or at least just confusion, or even those people that really dislike when those pathways are just slightly off. So it's another great thing that's added in here. A couple other general UI changes. You'll notice the rules actually have a green outline on the true path and a red outline on the false path by default as well. So it's a little bit nicer to see those pathways also for looking at the colors. So there are a lot of really cool changes available just in general while looking at the designs. Another useful one that a lot of people may not have liked from previous versions is when you're pulling data from an alternative or a dependent project. So for example, if I have a project that this is dependent on and I tried to grab something from the project, in the older versions of 9, if I grabbed a flow from a project or some other entity from this other project, the image of that project would appear in entirety in place of the step that I dragged in here. Well, now in this version, since we're trying to keep everything uniform, the step itself still has the same uniform design, just the image across the top will reflect the image of the project. So on this global entities project, any steps that I grab or items that I grab from that project are going to have that image up here across the top as available to me. So then I can still clearly see it's part of my project, but I don't have to worry about it looking a little odd or throwing off the general design. Now, another thing that you'll notice is an overall change in the design of the steps, specifically the end step, the start step, as well as throw exception steps. These are quite often very different looking compared to most other steps in decisions, and so all of these have been overhauled to have this new, more sleek design, as well as the dimensions that match kind of what is expected of things. So you can see in the old versions where it just kind of looked like that shape and everything connected to the bottom of the waypoint here at the bottom. Right now, it's just a full square shape that has everything pathways coming in and out of the outside of that shape. The same applied when you had multiple connections. So since they all went to that small point, they definitely did not look pretty sometimes when you had multiple connections going into the same step on the end step. But now they also share that same feature that other steps have, where multiple pathways will connect in different places to make it look nicer. The throw exception is another great one that shows it does match all of the other steps in the design here, so it's a little bit nicer to look at. And then you also have the catch exception step that also looks very similar. Same general design, the same kind of type of width and height, with multiples of 20 to make it look nicer and function a little bit nicer. Still stands out as a catch exception step, but follows the general design that we've added in this new update. Another useful update to have and to see is that there is now a new category in the logs called flow design migration. So if there were to be an error in the upgrade process, so if you're upgrading from a previous version to this one or anything like that, if the error that is occurring is related to this flow design refresh, then it will have a category of flow design migration, as you can see in this example here. So if you do have that error, you know it's not related to other things. It's related to this flow design refresh. So then you know where the potential issue is and where you can troubleshoot or work towards or ask for assistance with if you're trying to figure out what's happening. But then you at least know it's not additional errors or something else that's the problem. It's this new flow design refresh that is throwing some kind of error. I did not experience it when I did the upgrade, but you never know when that might occur. So it does exist here in case an error were to happen. Now, one last thing I wanted to showcase with this new flow design refresh are some changes to the debugger and the way that the debugger works. So in previous versions, if I just ran something, let me just input some data in here, run through this loops 10 times to send a bunch of emails, whatever is happening in my process. If I were to look at the data, by default, it is going to show me 2 executions from the beginning, 3 executions from the end, and it'll only show me 5 times in the way that this executed. So if I had something executing multiple times because of loops or other things like that, I don't get to see all the executions. I only see the first 2 and the last 3. So then if I wanted to see what happened in this email, check and make sure that my inputs are going through properly for all of my emails, I do only get to see the first 2 and the last 3. So I only get to look at 5 pieces of information. Well, we've adjusted that as well, so you can change some of those settings. The first thing that we've changed is you can now actually toggle the inputs on or off. So if I actually don't want to include a specific input in my test, I could just simply toggle it off. And now input 2 will be null for this test. And so I won't see that data here. If you expand the options down here, you'll see actually there's a number of samples that I can change, and I can set how many samples are available to me. There is a minimum of 5 here, so I can't do lower than 5, but I can change the number to change how many samples are available to me when I'm debugging. So in my case, if I want to see all 10 results when I'm running to check something and I can confirm that, I can set that sampling size to 10. And then when I look at this step, I can see all 10 executions available to me. So if I want to check the data and make sure what went through, I can see that. Then I can look at this and I can see here that input 1 cat did go through and input 2 left me with a blank because I did mark that as I toggled that off, right? And marked it to not display when I ran this session in the debugger. I can flip these. I can change this to something like 7, for example, run it again just to demonstrate one last time. And then you can see here, if I open this up, I only have 7 executions. It grabs the first 2 and then the last group until it reaches the number of executions. So it skips 3, 4, and 5, but it runs the first 2 and the last 5 to meet my 7 executions. And I can again look at the data and see now, since I ignored the first input, that's not there, but the second input is. So I can actually set those up in different ways as well. So overall, this concludes the various views that we have on our new flow step flow design refreshed with all the flow steps and the really cool ways that I can see things and hopefully reorganize how I view my flows and decisions. I think it looks great, and hopefully it can help keep things organized and help you to continue to work with decisions in the best ways possible. Thank you for watching.